Hello there, I hope you're doing great. So in this video, I'll be showing you how we can work with text files in GoLang. So let's start with an empty folder and we'll initialize it with go mod init, and then we'll create the main.go file. So as far as I can think, we commonly need types of functionalities while working with text files. So these are the 5 types of things we may need to do with text files. So the first is to check if the file exists. The second is to write a bulk of text into a file. And the third is to write the text which is stored in a list format, and each string in the list should be considered as one line. Similarly, we can read the whole text file into an string, or we may want to read it line by line. So these are the most common text operations we may want to do. So we'll see how we can do this. So we'll implement this function isFileExist that will take in argument as a file path, and it will return a boolean value that will tell us if the file exists or not. So to be honest, checking if a file exists or not in GoLang is not that straightforward, but once you use it one or two times, you will get habitual to it. So first we need to call this os.stat function, and we need to pass in the file paths. And this os.stat function returns us the file info and the error. So if there is error, that means that file does not exist. Okay, so we will use this logic to check if the file exists or not. So we don't need the file info details, we only need its error, and we'll return error equals to nil. So if there is no error, that means the error equals nil is true. That means that file exists. And if the stat function got any error, that means the error is not equals to nil, it will return the false. Fine. So let's try to check this function. So the temp.txt file doesn't exist. Now we'll create it, and let's try. And now it says that file exists. And if I just delete it will again show file does not exist. So this is how we can check if the file exists or not. The second thing we may want to do is we may want to write the whole text into a file. So for that we'll just do we'll call a function I'll just turn on the word wrap. Okay, so this is the file name that we want to write into, and this is the content of the file. Okay, so let's try to create that function. So when working with files, this open file function is like the godfather of all the files. I mean, there are many convenient functions, as in there's an open function, and I'll show you its implementation. So it in turn uses the open file function with these parameters, with the read only and the and if I show you the implementation of open file, it takes in 3 parameters: the name of the file, the flag, it has to be opened in the read only, write, or read write, or append, or those flags. There is the list of flags. I'll just show you the list of the flags as well. These are the list of the flags. Okay. And also here we will use the write file function, and I'll just show you that this also in turn calls the open file function. You can only work with this open file, but you will have to remember which parameters have to be passed when. So these convenient functions offer a great help oftentimes. So let's see the definition of a write file. It requires the file name, the data that has to be written, and also the permission the file has to be created with. Okay. So the content, if you see, has to be in the bytes array. So this write file takes in the content in the byte slice format. So we need to convert this string into the byte slice. So that is fairly easy. Okay, and as for the permission, we can give it 066. It doesn't have to be executable, but everyone can have the read and write permission for it. And this also returns an error. So our static checker is saying to check that error. So let's do that. So what we can do is we can return the error as well, and we'll just return this error. Okay, and here also we can handle the error, but for now we'll ignore it. Although ideally we shouldn't do that, but since this is a demonstration video, I can take the leverage. Okay, so let's try to run this function. And let's say if the write file has the content we set. So here it is. So this is the content, and this will appear as new line. Okay, so this works. So now we'll try to create a function that will take in a list of strings and will write it into the file line by line. Each string in the list will be considered as one line. So this is also a very, very common operation. So we'll see how we can do that. Let's go with this. So I've created these lines, and let's implement this function. So here what we have to do is we will need to open the file, and now we will need to use the open file function, because we want to control how we are using that file. What operations we are going to perform on it. Okay, and so let's check the definition of open file. It takes in the permission. Okay, so all we need to do here is just we only need to write. Fine, and the permission can be 60666. Okay, and let's see what this open file returns. It returns pointer to a file type and an error. So we have to handle those as well. This will be a file and this will be an error. And as always, if there is any error, we need to handle that. Loop over the lines, and we can call f.write string function, which will take in a string. Let's check the definition of a write string. it takes in the argument as the content we need to write into the file, and it returns the number of bytes it wrote and the error. So let's use that. So f.writeString. We don't need to take care of the number of bytes it wrote, and we can write in the lines. And if there is an error, as always, we'll just return the error. Although we should wrap this error and return a better error message, but for the time being it would do. So let's try to run this, and as we can do is we can ignore this error, and let's try to run this function, this write file function. And for the time being we can ignore these so that it doesn't show us. Okay, we made one mistake, that it should write as well as it can create. Okay, so we can append multiple flags. So now it can create as well as write. Let's try this. Yeah, now it created, and let's check the file content. Okay, yeah, and one more thing, we forgot to add the new line character. I mean, I am pretty sure you may have got that mistake before. Apologies for that. And now it should run. Yeah, this is line 1, this is line 2, and this should be on line 3. And now let's try to do our third operation. And for the timing we'll just use this file that we are writing to. Okay, and it should return us the content, and we'll just print that content. So now let's implement this. And one more thing, it may also return an error, but we'll ignore that. So this is fairly simple. We'll call the os.read file function and just pass in the path. And if we look closely, this read file function also calls the open function, and which in turn calls this open file function. So as I said earlier, this open file function is the most generic way of working with files in GoLang. Okay, and this returns us a byte string. Let's check its definition first. So this returns us the byte string and the error, and we will just we'll convert this byte string into string, and we will also return the error. So now let's check if this works fine or not. Okay, so it did give us the file content, and if I show the content of the write file, this is the same as this as the output. This file content of the write file is same as the output of the from the read function. And now similarly we can create call a function lines. Simply print out. We can just ignore this print statement for now, and we'll ignore this as well, just to keep our output clean. to read these line by line, what we can simply do, we can call the read line bulk, and I can just split it, and we can just call this function read bulk and just split the content into the new line characters. So this was fairly easy. Let's check if it works or not. I mean, there should have been I'll print it in a loop. Yeah, this is line 1, this is line 2, this is line 3. So this is how we can implement this function. So this was all. I hope you got to learn something from it. Thanks for watching.